headsets that allow. Hard to do. Life has to find some way. Yes, especially our kind of life. We do have certified copies prior. Yes. I have the file. Ready to go? Yes, sir. All right.
I think that's coming out under it.
The jury is back in the court and seated. Defendant and counsel all present, please be seated. Thank you for your patience. A couple things. First of all, our bailiff advised that some of you want to take an outside smoke break, and we've agreed that we can accommodate you. When we take our afternoon break, the bailiff will let you take a break outside. You all have to be together, however. That's one of the downsides of being sequestered. The other good news is I think that the lunchroom folks have created a better menu for you than so hopefully we'll get some choice. But we're ready to begin. I'll ask the state to please call this next witness.
State calls Tamika Jones. Stand right here, face the court.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this cause be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir. Right this way, please. Sit back on the chair.
Line up a little bit closer, please, ma'am. Tell us your full name.
Tamika Monique Jones.
Next, speak up a little bit and spell your first name.
T-E-M-I-K-A.
Dontae Morris.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you remember the day that the police officers were shot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before that day that the police officers were shot, had you had contact with Mr. Morris a couple of times?
Yes, sir.
And had you given him rides?
One time, yes, sir.
You gave him a ride?
Yes, sir.
Did he pay you for gas money?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On the morning that the police officers were shot, early that morning, the same, I guess it would be the day before going into that early morning, did you come into contact with Dontae Morris in a residential area known as Johnson Kenneth Court Apartments?
Yes, sir.
And is that commonly known as J Court?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you came into contact with him, can you tell the people sitting over here, the jurors, how he was dressed?
Blue top, cream bottom, white shoes.
Okay. The top he had on, did it have sleeves or was it a vest or?
I want to say it was a vest, like a blue vest or a
Blue
dark
vest?
dark colored vest.
And did he have a shirt on underneath that?
Yes, sir, a white one.
Okay. The blue vest that he had on, was it a dark blue or a light blue?
I want to say a dark blue.
Okay. Did it have pockets on it?
I want to say if it was pockets, it might have been up top somewhere or down below.
Okay. And did the pockets, did they have closing devices on them of some type?
I'm not really sure, maybe a zipper.
Okay. Do you remember later that day, that same day, being interviewed by some police officers?
Yes, sir.
If I showed you part of your interview, would that possibly refresh your memory, help your memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm referring to page 24, master discovery number.
Thank you, counsel.
If you just look in that area right there. Don't read it out loud, just read it to yourself and see if that helps your memory, refresh your memory.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that help refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
All right. And do you remember whether that was a vest that he had on?
Yes, sir. I think it was a vest. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Please, I can't hear you.
I know.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Right here.
Yes, sir.
Let me get back here to kind of force you to talk a little louder.
Yes, sir.
So that was a vest,
Yes, sir.
and was it dark blue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you remember telling the police that he had dark khaki shorts on
Yes, sir.
that had pockets on the sides?
On the bottom, like big cargo pants.
Okay,
maybe.
I was just going to ask, like cargo pants?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think you identified some type of shoes he had on.
I want to say some white Air Forces.
Okay. And white Air Force would be like sneakers or tennis shoes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you were being, well, let me ask you this. In addition to seeing him that morning, early that morning, did he later, around 2 o'clock in the morning, did he call you on your phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you remember why he called you?
Because he wanted to take me out. He wanted to go with me. He wanted to, well, at the time he said, get at me.
Get at you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was your response?
Okay, I had gave him my number, and I was supposed to meet him the next morning to go for breakfast.
Okay. Do you remember later that morning, like we talked about earlier, later that day, some detectives coming out and interviewing you?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember the detectives showing you a photograph?
Yes, sir.
And have you seen that photograph recently within the last couple of weeks?
Yes, sir.
States K1. May I approach the witness, Judge?
Yes, was this in evidence?
No, Your Honor. States K1 marked for identification. I'm going to show it to you, ma'am. Do you remember being shown that photograph?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you remember signing it and it being dated and the time?
Yes, sir.
Looks like 2:50 p.m., is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember writing this at the bottom? Is that your handwriting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember telling the police that it looks like him because of the head shape and the outfit that he has on?
Yes, sir.
And when you said him, were you referring to Dontae Morris or this person you knew as Quelo?
Yes, sir.
And did the clothing he had on in that photograph appear to be the same clothing that he had on when you had seen him that morning?
Yes, sir.
You have one moment, Judge?
Yes, sir.
I'll tender the witness, Your Honor.
Your Honor, before cross-examination, may I have a moment to confer with the Assistant State Attorney? We need just a moment, Charlotte.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
I'm sorry, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Jones, in November of 2010, you can say one moment, were you adjudicated of a crime for petty theft?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It was a misdemeanor?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
Any questions, counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Jones, back in June of 2010, how long had you known Coelho or Dontae Morris, as you later learned his actual legal name was?
I might have seen him one time a couple months before that, or twice before, a couple months before that, but I didn't know him at all.
So y'all didn't hang out or
No,
see each
sir.
other on a regular basis?
No, sir.
When did he call you to ask you if he could get at you? Is that what you said he said?
Right. Yes, sir. He had met me in J Court, and then we exchanged numbers, and then he later called me. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you'd met briefly and he got your number?
Yes, sir.
And does get at you mean kind of have a dating relationship with you, a romantic relationship?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were open to that?
Yes, sir.
Never had gone out with him before?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you and he have any common friends that you saw on a regular basis? People that knew him well that also knew you well?
Not that I know of, no, sir.
Okay. So he was pretty much a stranger to him except for a couple of brief meetings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was the photo that you were shown just a while ago, State's Exhibit K1, what you were shown and asked to identify?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you say that you could be absolutely certain from the quality of that photograph who that person was in the photograph?
No, sir.
So you thought it might be Mr. Morris, but you weren't sure?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has anyone at all ever either threatened you or promised you anything in order for you to testify
No, sir.
in this trial?
Except for the subpoena.
The meeting on the night of, I believe it would have been the 29th, I guess it was. What did you tell us what time that was?
It was roughly about 1 something in the morning when I encountered with him. It was maybe like, got to be like maybe 12 something when I encountered with him, and maybe like 1 something, 2 o'clock when he actually called, or something like that. I'm not sure. I actually had times on my phone back then, but I can't remember now.
Oh, well, just so I make sure I understand what you're saying. You encountered him physically, that is, you ran into him personally.
Right, yes, sir.
And y'all talked briefly.
Right, yes, sir.
And then a little later he called you?
Yes, sir.
And that's when he was trying to make the arrangement to get at you, to get with you?
Yes, sir.
All right. So How long was the actual personal encounter where you actually saw him as opposed to talking on the phone?
Maybe 3 minutes or so.
So very brief?
Yes, sir.
Was he in a vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Did he get out of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Just for 3 minutes or so?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many people were there?
Just 3. It was me, him, and a friend of mine.
Okay. Can I have a moment, John?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Jones, thank you very much. I have no further questions for you at this time.
You redirect now?
Yes, sir. Ms. Jones, this encounter on that early morning of June 29, 2010, at Johnson Kenneth Court Apartment, J Court, as you
Yes,
call
sir.
it, did you speak to him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You clearly saw him? You could see who it was you were talking to?
Yes, sir.
And you knew it was Quelo?
Yes, sir.
All right. In the prior occasions, like the one time when you gave him a ride, you were in a car riding with him?
Yes, sir.
Talking to him?
No, he was pretty quiet.
Okay.
But I did take him somewhere.
All right. But you knew who he was and you could recognize him when you saw him?
Yes, sir.
All right. At that time, where were you living?
6203 North 44th Street.
Say it one more time.
6203 North 44th Street.
Okay. 6203 North 44th Street.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now,
Which is like maybe a minute or 2 minutes away from J Court.
from J Court, okay.
Yes, sir.
We talked about him calling you later,
Yes, sir.
and I believe you said that that call came in around, just give me one moment. That call came in around 2 a.m. in the morning, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember when you were being interviewed by the police, do you remember showing them that you had received a call from Quelo? I think that was the number you had in your
Had it
phone.
locked in. Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you remember that number, if I showed you what you gave the police, would it refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Master Discovery number 24, Counsel?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the number 813-531-3906, was that the number he called you from?
Yes, sir.
And you had it in your phone under the contact name Quelo?
Quelo. Yes, sir.
Okay. I have nothing else, Judge.
This witness be released.
Judge,
What is it?
if I may, you brought up one new item. I'd like to
Go ahead.
have just 2 questions on recross, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I neglected to ask you the first time around, Ms. Jones, you said that when you saw Mr. Morris on the early morning hours at J Court, he was in a car. Do you remember what kind of car, what color it was?
It was white.
A white car?
Yes, sir.
And was somebody else driving it?
No, sir. Not that I know of. I just seen him.
Okay. With regard to the telephone number that you were just asked about by Mr. Harmon, did you know in whose name that phone was registered?
No, sir.
Okay. Was that just a contact number that?
That was the number he had gave me at that time. He was just like, gave me the number. I locked it in on the Quelo, and then he called me from the exact same number.
see.
So I'm not sure.
But you don't know whether it was his
No, sir.
phone or he borrowed it from somebody?
No, sir. I'm not sure.
Nothing further. Thank you, Judge.
The witness be released.
Your Honor, may I have one moment? Judge, may I have a brief redirect?
Yes, sir. Go into that area, please.
Yes, sir. the call you received was around 2, but you had seen him before
Prior.
that,
Yes, sir.
like early, right between, I think you said between midnight and 1.
Yes, sir.
And that's when you saw him in the white car?
Yes, sir.
And this person that we're talking about, is this defendant sitting over here, Mr. Morris?
Yes, sir.
Dontae Morris?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize him as he sits here today?
Yes, sir.
Can you please point him out, describe an article of clothing?
With the red sweater and the dreads.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant, Dontae Morris?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Judge.
May the witness be released.
Yes, sir.
Counsel?
Yes, Your
Ma'am,
Honor.
you're released. You're free to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please call your next witness, State.
The state would recall Detective Charles Masucci. Sorry.
Witness, second witness stands still under oath. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Sergeant. Sergeant, were cell phone records ordered in this case?
Yes, sir.
And were they ordered for the subscriber number 813-531-3906?
Yes, they were.
Okay, and your investigation revealed that those were, that was a cell phone that Mr. Morris was using in the days or around the time of the murder?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Did you also order cell phone records for cell phone number 863-844-1193?
Yes, that was a second set of tolls that we requested.
Okay. And did your investigation reveal that that number was being utilized by Courtney Brantley, the driver of the Toyota Camry?
Yes, that is who the subscriber, or that phone was being carried by at the time.
And when your subscriber information came back, and first of all, who was the cell phone carrier for those numbers?
Metro PCS.
When the subscriber information came back for Miss Brantley's number at 907, I'm sorry, did it come back at with a subscriber address?
Yes, the address was 907 North Parsons in Seffner, Florida.
Okay. Was it Brandon actually on the subscriber information?
Brandon is correct, yes.
And is Seffner right there in Brandon or right next to Brandon?
Yes, they're adjacent neighborhoods down here.
Other than the term caller wireless, was there a subscriber name for Miss Brantley's number?
No.
Now, have you traveled to 907 North Parsons Avenue in Brandon?
Yes, on a variety of occasions.
And have you come into contact with Miss Brantley there?
Yes.
Did she live there?
Yes.
So for those two telephone numbers from Metro PCS, you ordered subscriber information, is that right?
Subscriber and other information, yes.
Okay. Were cell toll records ordered for both of those phone numbers from Metro PCS?
Yes, both were ordered.
And were those ordered for dates including June 29, 2010?
Yes.
Did you also order cell phone text message records for both of those phone numbers from Metro PCS?
Yes, they were part of the request.
And did the dates you ordered those for, did that include the date of June 29, 2010?
Yes.
We'll tender the witness, Your Honor.
Questions?
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sir, although you came back with a subscriber address, did you come back with a name associated with that address?
On the 863,
Yes, sir.
that I did not. There was no name associated with that number for the set of tolls.
Okay. Do you know anything about how subscriber access is maintained with that particular provider?
Yes,
Okay. Do they maintain names, or do they require identification to set up an account?
with Metro PCS at that time, and I believe currently, you did not have to provide, for lack of a better term, lawful identification, a driver's license, credit card. So you could basically make up a name.
Fictional character, whatever. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. If I can have a moment, Judge. I think I have simply one additional question.
Yes,
Sergeant,
sir.
Which is with respect to number 813-531-3906, and last four, 3906.
Yes, sir.
Did you have subscriber information for that number?
Yes, it came back to, I'd have to look at the records. It came back to a gentleman's name. I need to look at the subscriber to refresh my recollection.
Yes, sir. Do you have that available to you?
Let me check real quick.
Thank you.
No, the subscriber information isn't on this printout, so I'd have to look at the subscriber if you have it.
I don't believe I have that with me, sir. At least not in this particular folder. Without refreshing a recollection, you don't recall? Is that
No,
correct?
I don't recall the specific name. It was like two first names.
Okay. We're gonna have a moment, Judge. I wanna.
Yes.
Do those two first names, in terms of subscriber information, sir, Does Queen or Lady Queen, does that refresh your recollection?
Well, yes, there is a subscriber known to me, Queen Latifah, but that's for another telephone,
Okay.
not this specific number.
Okay. And that's not associated with this particular number?
That is correct.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything else, Nick?
Briefly. The subscriber name for the 813513 number that you associated to the defendant that he was using around the time of the murders, it was not in his name, needless to say.
That is correct. It was something Ray, and it was not in the defendant's name. That is correct.
Could it have been Billy Ray?
Billy Ray, yes. That's what, two first names.
Right. Now, from what you said before that, and with counsel's questions to you about Metro PCS, was that, and is that in your investigative experience uncommon with Metro PCS records to have fictitious names or aliases or other names?
I would actually generalize that it's common,
Okay.
as opposed to uncommon to have fictitious names.
Is it common for people to use phones in these investigations that don't belong to them or belong to other people?
Sure.
Or when I say belong to them, I mean it's not in their subscriber name.
Yes.
Will he be released?
No, I'd ask that he be retained under subpoena.
You want him in the building?
Yes, sir.
Detective, please wait outside the meeting. Please call your next witness, Nick.
Thank you.
Detective Salvatore.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Further questions?
Sir, please give us your full name and then spell both first name and last name.
Salvatore Augeri, Salvatore Augeri.
Thank you. Proceed, please.
Sure, how are you employed?
I'm a police officer with the city of Tampa,
How long have you been with the city of Tampa in that capacity?
coming up on 29 years.
What's your present assignment?
I'm a corporal on a street crime squad in Uniform District 1.
On June 29th of 2010, did you become involved in the investigation of the deaths of officers Curtis and Kocat?
I did.
What was your assignment at that point? What was your daily job? Were you also a corporal then?
No, I was in the homicide division as a detective.
On July 1st of 2010, or approximately 2 days after these homicides, did you come in contact with a young lady by the name of Tamika Jones?
I did.
Okay. And have you been waiting outside to testify for this trial?
I have.
And is the lady that you came into contact with on July 1st of 2010 as Tamika Jones, did you see her recently just exit this courtroom a matter of minutes ago?
Yes.
Okay. Did you meet with her on the afternoon of July 1st of 2010?
I did.
And what was the purpose for your meeting her?
There was information that she may have some information pertinent to this case, and ultimately conducted an interview with her.
Could you get a little bit closer to our microphone, please?
Yes.
When you conducted your interview with her, did you have a photograph in your possession that you intended to show her?
I did.
Let me show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit K1. Do you recognize that exhibit, sir?
I do.
Is that the same photograph you had in your possession during your interview with Tamika Jones?
It was.
And where did you obtain that photograph?
The still photo was obtained from Detective Chuck Masucci.
Okay, now Sergeant Masucci?
Yes,
And is that the very same photograph you used during your interview with Tamika Jones?
yes,
Is that a still photograph taken from the dash cam video of Officer Curtis's video camera that was mounted in his vehicle at the time of the homicide?
it is.
And when you interviewed Tamika Jones on July 1st of 2010, did you show her that photograph?
I did.
And did she make markings on that photograph?
She did.
And did you make markings on that photograph to authenticate it as to the time and date that you showed Miss Jones?
Yes.
What lettering did you place on there?
I have my signature, the date, and the time.
And is that how you can identify with certainty that photograph as the very same one you showed Tamika Jones on July 1st of 2010?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move that exhibit into evidence. K1.
Counsel?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
K1 will be received.
Can you tell the jury, please, what phrase Tamika Jones affixed or placed on that photograph?
She wrote a line on here. It says, she signed it and dated it along with the time and wrote out specifically, it looks like him because of the head shape and the outfit that he has on. Oops.
Your Honor, I'd publish State's Exhibit K1 at this time, if I may. From your knowledge of the investigation, sir, do you recognize the two individuals in Tampa Police Department uniform standing along the passenger side of that vehicle?
I did.
And who do you know those to be now as a result of your investigation?
Officer Cocab, closest to the camera with his back to us, and Officer Curtis with the left profile of his head.
Did you obtain telephone contact information from Miss Jones at the time you interviewed her, what her number was?
Yes.
And what did she provide to you should you want to speak with her again?
Her cell number was 813-735-8809.
We have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any questions, Counsel?
No questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Is this witness be released, State?
If he could remain for just a short while outside.
Corporal Joe, they may need you again if you please wait outside. They'll let you know.
Yes, sir.
Please call your next witness, State.
State calls Ashley Price.
Stand right here, face the clerk, be sworn in.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this cause be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Right this way, please.
Please slide up a little closer to the microphone and tell us your full name, please.
Ashley Price,
And spell your first name,
Ashley,
and then your last name.
Price.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Ms. Price, how old are you, ma'am?
25.
In June of 2010, this summer, 3 years ago, did you know an individual named Dontae Morris?
Yes.
What name did you know him by?
Quelo.
And had you met him through your sister's boyfriend?
Yes.
And what's your sister's name?
Tiffany Price.
And what was your sister Tiffany's boyfriend's name?
Javante Denard.
Javante Denard?
Yes.
Did he have a nickname?
Yes, Pedro.
Pedro?
Yes.
You know, you might want to get just a little closer to the microphone. Not right on top of it, just a little closer. You're doing pretty good, though. In that summer of 2010, the summer that the police officers were shot, how often, and I'm talking about before the shooting of the police officers, how often would you see Quelo, Dontae Morris?
Like on a day-to-day basis or every other day.
Okay. And did you talk to him frequently?
He used to call, but not too much. Over the phone, not in person.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
Was most of your contact with him by phone?
Yes.
And when he would call you, did he seem to be comfortable with you?
Yes.
And would he confide in you and tell you things?
Yes.
And Ms. Price, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Yes.
And do you know how many times?
3.
3 times. And was that all on the same date?
Yes.
In court? Okay. Do you have a charge pending against you right now?
Yes.
Or an open case, I guess?
Yes.
Is that something that has arisen since all this happened back in June of 2010?
Understanding your question.
Okay.
I couldn't understand anything.
Yeah, please keep your voice up. It's real hard to hear in here.
Okay.
The charge you have pending against you now, is that something that has arisen in your life since the summer of 2010?
Yes.
Okay. So that wasn't pending against you when the officers were shot around that time?
No.
Okay. Have I or anyone from my office promised you anything in exchange for your testimony in this case on that charge?
No.
Okay. Are you expecting any kind of favorable treatment of any kind?
No.
Have you ever been, back in June of, or back in that summer of 2010, were you ever intimate with Mr. Morris?
Yes.
And on how many occasions?
1 time.
Okay. Now I want to take you to the day that the 2 police officers were shot. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Do you recall on the day that happened receiving a phone call in the early morning hours around 3:30 in the morning?
Yes.
And who was that from?
Dontae.
Dontae Morris?
Yes.
Okay. And had he called you more than once that morning?
Yes.
Did you answer all of his phone calls?
No.
And when you did you finally answer that call around 3:30?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what he wanted?
A ride.
He wanted a ride?
Yes.
Did he tell you where he was?
No.
Did he tell you if he was with anyone?
No.
Did you give him a ride?
No.
Did you have a car at that time, Ms. Price?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Do you remember later that day, this would be after the sun's come up in the daylight, like around noon, do you remember Mr. Morris, or talking to him again on the phone?
I'm going to object to the continued pattern of leading questions, Your Honor.
Let's sustain. Let the witness testify.
Do you remember later in the day, after the sun had come up around noon, do you recall speaking with him again?
Yes.
And was that in person or on the phone?
On the phone.
And before that conversation had occurred, had you received other phone calls from the defendant?
Yes.
And did you answer those?
No.
And when you were speaking with him around noon of that day, were you talking to him on your phone or on your sister's phone?
My sister's.
Okay. And when he called you that second time, what did he say to you? Like in the very beginning of the conversation?
That he did it.
That he did it?
Yes.
Did you know what he was talking about?
Oh, yes.
Had he referred you to something, to look at something?
To watch the news.
Okay. And had you seen the news that morning about the police officers?
Yes, sir.
And that's what he was referring to?
Yes.
Did he tell you that he did it because he wanted to get away?
Yes.
Honor, again.
Judge, can we approach?
No. Approach.
For the state, it is present for the
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please, ma'am, just answer the specific questions asked of you by the lawyers, nothing more.
Ms. Price, did he tell you that he shot the officers to get away from them?
Yes.
Did he tell you that the officer had gone back to run his name?
Yes.
Did he tell you that he was afraid that he had a warrant?
Yes.
Did he say whether he shot them from him sitting in the car, or did he say he'd already got out of the car before he shot them?
Out of the car?
Did he tell you who he was with?
No.
Okay. Did he tell you if he was a driver or a passenger?
Passenger?
And did he tell you whether he had given the officer his name?
Yes.
Yes, he did give him his name?
Yes.
Did he tell you where he got the gun from?
No.
Do you recall being previously interviewed and telling the police that he told you he got it from under the seat?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay. Did he tell you how many police officers there were?
Yes.
How many?
2.
And did he tell you where he shot them? What part of their bodies?
Yes.
And where did he tell you he shot them?
In the head.
And did he use a descriptive term for them that let you know what race they were?
Yes.
And what term was that?
Crackers.
Okay, he said he shot the crackers?
Yes.
And that let you know they were white?
Yes.
Okay. Did he say anything to you about, or did he say anything to you that concerning that he was going to try to go somewhere?
Yes.
And where did he say he was going to try to go?
To Jacksonville.
Okay. Did he say anything about leaving the state of Florida?
No.
This individual that you had that call with that morning that you talked to, that you've referred to as Quelo and Dontae Morris, do you see him here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Can you please point to where he is and describe an article of clothing?
With a red shirt.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant, Dontae Morris.
Yes, sir.
The next day, June 30th, the day after you had this phone conversation, the day after the 2 police officers were killed, did you in fact go to the Tampa Police Department?
Yes.
So you went to them, they didn't come to you?
Correct.
And did you go there to tell them what you've told these jurors today?
Yes.
And did you tell them what you told the jurors today?
Yes.
Do you recall in March of 2011, well, let me ask you this. Do you recall listening to a recorded phone call from the jail where Mr. Morris was able to get to reach you through your sister, Tiffany?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember that happening in March of 2011?
Yes.
Do you recall the defendant asking you to come somewhere?
Yes.
Where did he ask you to come to?
Down to the jailhouse to see him.
And did you set up an appointment with him or tell him you were going to be there at a certain time?
Yes.
Did you go?
No.
May I have one moment, Judge? Your Honor, I'll tender the witness.
Any questions, counsel?
Good afternoon, Ms. Price. Ms. Price, at the time that the 2 police officers were killed, were you facing charges then?
Well, I was on probation, but I had no pending case.
Okay. And are you on probation now?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you facing consequences for violating the probation?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you entered a plea to the charges that you're on probation now after the officers were shot, right?
I'm not sure that's the timing.
Okay. Do you remember how long you spent in, you told us you have 3 felony convictions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember how long you spent in jail on those 3 felonies?
Objection, relevance.
Speak. No question.
Okay. Ms. Price, you've told us that you knew a person that you called Qualo back in June of 2010?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know him well?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you told us just a few minutes ago that you knew him well, and that y'all had been intimate. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did at some point during a deposition that you gave it, do you know what a deposition is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tell us what you think a deposition is.
Maybe I'll be a document of everything that, with all the witnesses and statements.
Do you recall giving a deposition, in this case, a sworn statement?
Judge, I would ask the counsel, I'm sorry, counsel, please speak up. I can't hear her, and I'm having a hard time hearing the witness.
Okay. Do you recall having made the sworn statement that you didn't know Dontae Morris personally?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. If I showed you something, might that help refresh your recollection?
Maybe yes.
Okay. For the benefit of the court and counsel, I'm referring to deposition of Ashley Price, page 16, line 19.
What date, counsel?
Deposition taken October 18th, 2011. Sorry, page line 14. Ms. Price, Judge, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Well, page 16, line 14. But first, Ms. Price, I'd like you to take a look at the document and see if it is indeed what it purports to be. Okay, it purports to be a transcript of a deposition of you taken on October 18, 2011. Would you take a look at it and see if that is indeed what it is? So, Ms. Price, do you recall having given that deposition?
Yes, ma'am.
Sworn statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you take a look at page 16, line 14?
Yes.
Just read that to yourself.
Yes.
I read it.
Okay.
Okay, what's the question?
Does that help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Did you, at some time other than in this courtroom, give a statement that you didn't know Dontae Morris personally?
Judge, I would ask counsel to reference the entire transcript and the time period that the witness was being asked about.
Well, let's clear it up. Just, do you understand the question, counsel? You
I
understand the
do,
question?
Judge.
Excuse me, do you understand her question?
Yes, I
Will you ask your question again?
Okay. Ms. Price, the question that was asked of you
No,
says...
ma'am, no, ma'am.
Okay.
The question, ma'am, she asked you to read something. Did you read it?
Yes, sir.
And the question is, does that refresh your recollection as to whether you made that statement?
Yes.
Does it refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Now ask a question.
Okay. And would you take a look at page 15, Ms. Price, and at line 14? There's a question posed to you. Do you understand what time period we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So what time period were you talking about then?
I'm not sure. I can't
Well,
answer that question.
Okay. Was it stated to you May, June 2010?
I'm not sure.
Well, would you look at page 15, line 14?
Okay.
Does that question there help you recall what time period that we were talking about?
I don't remember.
Okay. Would you look at line 16?
Okay.
Okay.
Judge, can we approach?
Approach the bench.
Okay. And during that time, were you being questioned about where your sister lived?
Yes.
Okay. And did you understand that during the time you were talking about where your sister lived, that the period of time you're referring to is May or June of 2010?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did you go on and were you asked questions about how frequently you saw your sister?
I just want to check at this point.
No rule at this point.
Okay. And and do you recall right after that series of questions being asked if you knew Dontae Morris during that period of time?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall stating, I didn't know him personally, I knew him of him, and I knew he was one of Javonte's friends?
I don't remember.
Okay. And when you took a look at the transcript, for the benefit of court and counsel, I'm reading from page 16, line 16. When you took a look at that, that didn't help you recall whether or not you'd made that statement?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, but you do recall having appeared and given a deposition, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you do recall that this document seems to be a transcript of that deposition?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Moving on.
You can straighten this out. Continue, please.
Okay. Now, do you recall saying that you, at that time, went out with Dontae Morris, but you weren't really interested in him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And they said he wasn't your type, right?
Correct.
That he was too dark?
Correct.
Okay. And that you saw him one time total, like dating?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that does that suggest to you that the two of y'all weren't really very close?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So even though you saw him the one time and you weren't attracted to him, but you guys were very, very close.
Yes, ma'am.
And he was a person who confided in you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you did speak to the police while all this was going on, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, you talked to, I guess, Officer Durkin, I guess on June 30th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, was that during the time that everybody was looking for Dontae Morris?
2 days after? Yes.
Okay. And were there some things going on in Kenneth Court or Johnson Kenneth Court?
Yes, ma'am.
Were police all over the place?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Armored vehicles?
Yes.
Knocking on doors?
Yes.
Pulling people in and out and around?
Yes.
Now, is that the atmosphere? Were people getting arrested right and left?
I'm not sure if they were getting arrested there.
Okay. Now, and is that this time frame, is that the spirit of what was going on when you went to the police?
Yes.
Now, matter of fact, when you began your statement to the police, the first thing the officer tells you is, you're not in trouble, right?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, but that's when, and it is at that time that you told him you knew Dontae Morris very, very well.
I don't remember.
Okay. Ms. Price, I'm going to show you what purports to be a transcript of a tape statement you gave to the police. First, I'd like to have you look at the document and see if it is what it reports to be, and then I'd like to point to you out to some things that may help refresh your memory, okay?
I would object to this process. There's been no establishment of a lack of recollection.
She said she didn't recall one thing you asked her. If you want to refresh her memory on that, proceed.
Okay. For the benefit of court and counsel, I'm referring to Master Discovery, page 249. May I approach, Your Honor?
Please, yeah, please show it to the witness.
Ms. Price, first, would you look at the document and see if it is what it purports to be? Will you look at the front cover of the document? Okay. What is the cover, first lines, what does that say that it is? Does it say it's an interview of Ashley Price with Officer Kevin Durkin?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it give a date?
Yes, ma'am.
What date?
June 30th, 2010.
Okay. Do you recall giving that statement to Officer Durkin back on June 30th of 2010?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the officer put you under oath? Did he ask you to swear to tell the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you take a look at page 5 in about the middle and see if that helps refresh your recollection of something you may have said to the officer?
Judge, can we approach?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall being asked if you knew Dontae Morris very, very well?
Yes.
And do you recall what your answer was to Officer Durkin back in June of 2010?
Yes.
Okay, and the answer was yes, that you did?
Yes.
Okay. Now, okay. Now, do you when you were speaking, that's all I have is to that. Okay? So, how well did you know Mr. Morris?
Well enough for him to come to me as somebody who you need to talk to.
Okay. So he confided in you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did he tell you things like where he went to high school?
No.
Judge, I'm sorry. Can we approach, Your Honor? I apologize.
What'd you mention? Just answer the specific question. If it calls for a yes or no, just say yes or no.
Okay.
Ask your question, Counsel.
Did you know where Mr. Morris went to school?
No, ma'am.
Did you know if he had a brother?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you meet his family?
No, ma'am.
Did you know where he went to high school?
No, ma'am.
What he wanted to do for a career?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What you know about Mr. Morris is simply that for some reason he called you and told you he did this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that's about all that you really know about him, right?
Counsel.
Oh, sorry, I'll withdraw that question.
Yes, ma'am.
Ask another question.
Okay. Mr. Morris was someone you weren't really interested in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further to witness to.
Redirect, Counsel.
Before she does that, man, I have...
Oh, yes, Judge, may I?
Yeah.
Ms. Price, did you receive some financial assistance from the police in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that?
Relocation.
I'm sorry?
Relocation.
And by that, do you mean that the funds for you to relocate came from the police?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you receive any assistance regarding your housing itself when you relocated?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you live in subsidized housing?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what counsel said there.
Did she live in subsidized housing?
Thank you, counsel.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, Ms. Price, at the time, and going back to the time that the police are out looking for Mr. Morris, I believe you talked about armored trucks, all that, back in
Yes, ma'am.
June of 2010, when the police spoke to you, were you threatened that you may be charged with something?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did anybody speak to you about calling the Department of Children and Families as regards to your small children?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So the only benefit you received was financial.
Objection, asked and answered.
So the only benefit you received was financial.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Price. Thank you.
Redirect. Redirect. Are you folks hearing anything at all? Because it seems that some noises some of our words are getting their way back there. I just want to be sure it's not getting over here. Okay. All right, can you read direct comments?
Judge, I think you had an affirmative answer from
It says that maybe you heard one word, but it wouldn't make any sense because it's only one word out of everything.
It's not coherent. It's like a mumbling.
Just whenever we do come up here, you do the headphone things, right?
So I take those.
Okay. Answer the specific question asked of you. Don't add anything. Just answer the question. If you don't know something to say, you don't know. Ask the question.
Ms. Price, you were asked about being on probation at that time. I'm assuming at the time you went and talked to the police. Do you remember being charged with the charges that you've talked about, that you stated that you've been convicted of 3 felonies? Do you remember those arising in July of 2010?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that would have been after you spoke to the police, is that right?
Yes, sir.
As a result of talking to the police, were you given any kind of benefit of any kind on those charges?
No, sir.
By either myself, the state attorney's office, or the city of Tampa?
No, sir.
Now, I want to ask some questions about this deposition that you gave back in October of 2011 that counsel asked you about, okay?
Okay.
This was when counsel was reading from this page 15 and 16. That was the very beginning of the deposition, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. You were asked, do you remember being asked how long you had known Javante?
Yes.
Okay. And you said about a year.
Yes.
Okay. And you remember being asked, where did Tiffany live compared to where you lived? You told us you lived in Park Terrace. Where did she live at that time? Do you remember me asking, what time period are we talking about? And Mr. Heilman saying, May, June 2010.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And remember your response being, she lived in Johnson, Kenneth Court, and that would be Tiffany.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember then being asked 2 or 3 questions later, would you and your sister Tiffany see each other frequently? And you answered yes.
Yes.
Okay. and then being asked, would you walk over to her place? And she'd walk over to your place, and you answered yes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Heilman asked how often would that happen, and you said almost every day.
Yes.
Then you were asked the question, okay, and these are questions from Mr. Heilman. Okay, and I assume that sometimes you'd see Javante over at her place if you went over there, and your response was yes.
Yes.
Then you were asked the question, did you know Dontae Morris during that period of time?
Yes.
Right, so that's several questions after you were asked about the time period that Tiffany lived in Park Terrace, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you answered, when they asked, did you know Dontae Morris during that period of time, you said, I didn't know him personally, I knew of him, and I knew he was one of Javante's friends.
Yes.
Were you talking about a time period that was well before
Yes.
the spring of 2010?
Yes.
And in fact, Mr. Heilman then asks, okay, let me make sure I understand what you're telling me. You said you did know him personally. Let's talk about that, what that means. I don't know you personally. And you answer, right. Because at that time in October, you didn't know Mr. Heilman personally, correct?
Correct.
And he says, we just met, and you answer, uh-huh. And then he asks the question, if I saw you tomorrow, I might realize that. Yeah, I know who that is. And you said, yeah.
Yes.
And then his question was, but I don't really know you. Is that the way you knew Dontae Morris, just by being able to know who he was when you saw him? And you answered some parts. And the question then was, huh? And you answered some parts from the beginning before. And the question was then, okay. And then you said, I first met him. That's around when I first met him, around that time. The question, around May and June. And you started nodding your head. And the question was, so you didn't know him before, say, April. And your answer was, I just knew him as Javante's friend or about him. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So my question to you was, in April and May of 2010, is that when you started having this relationship with him after that, where you were intimate with him on one occasion?
Yes.
And then he would call you?
Yes.
And I think you said he would call you every other day at least?
Yes.
Okay. But you only saw him on one or two occasions?
Yes.
And you said he would confide in you and seem to be comfortable with you?
Yes.
Do you remember him telling you that he liked the fact that you were so quiet?
Yes.
I want to talk to you about the transcript counsel was reading from of the interview you had with Detective Durkin at the Tampa Police Department. Okay? The day that you went down there on your own and talked to them.
Okay.
All right? Do you remember being asked on that same page 5, how long have you known him? And you said probably a year.
Yes.
Right. So you had known him since April as a friend, someone you talked to on the phone, and someone you'd been intimate with, but you had known him for over a year who he was.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever lived together? Your answer was no, right?
Right.
But you know him well enough that you know him when you talk to him, and your answer was yes.
Yes.
Right? And Detective Durkin says you guys have been intimate in the past. You've had sex with him in the past, and your answer was yes.
Yes.
And then Detective Durkin says, okay, so you know this man very, very well, and you answered yes.
Yes.
But it was really Detective Durkin saying that, not you.
Yes.
But you did know him very well.
Counsel, approaching it, please.
All right.
Let me approach.
my answer, my question, ma'am, was did you know him when you would talk to him, and did you know him very well through your conversations on the phone with him?
Yes.
And would he confide in you?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk to you about this issue of financial assistance that council talked to you about. You were recently relocated, your residence. You were allowed to move into an
to the
apartment.
leading aspect of this.
We'll rule at this point. Let
You were recently.
Let the witness testify.
You were recently relocated, is that correct?
Yes.
Did the Tampa Police Department assist you financially in, I believe, your first and last month's rent or something like that?
Yes.
Or paying a deposit, security deposit?
Yes.
Do you know how much that was?
I don't know the exact amount.
Was Detective Masucci the main person working with you on that?
Yes.
Okay. In the months before that, in fact, for the last several months, have the Tampa Police Department been trying to relocate you?
Yes.
Have they attempted to relocate you through Metropolitan Ministries, which is a charity here in Tampa?
Yes.
And through other charitable organizations?
Yes.
And they were not successful in doing that?
No, they weren't.
And was that because of threats that have been made to you and to your family?
Coach, eventually.
nothing else.
Is this witness to be released or needed to remain available, counsel?
Need her to remain available.
You want her in the building?
Yes, sir.
And wait outside, please don't leave that. Okay, members of the jury, you've been sitting for over an hour and a half. Let's go ahead and take a recess. This is the recess where if you folks want to, the bailiff will accommodate you by letting you go outside, but you have to do so in a group together, all right? Please don't discuss anything here in the building.
All rise.